Okay, before we get started on the video, just want to take a moment and mention, if you like the content on the channel, if you would help support the channel by liking and hitting that subscribe button. If you have an idea for a future project, if you would please leave a comment below. And just real briefly, I've spent 3 partial days on this. It was a pretty fun project, and $410 I think is what I'd spent altogether. So I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, we're working on this 2015 Kia Soul. We're going to be replacing the transmission. It's developed a lot of slipping, and then after that started kicking, bucking, so those type of issues. Here we have our replacement, and it's a little bit weathered. It's come from way up north somewhere, and but this has 40K on it, and it should be a really good replacement. Now, one of the things, even though it only has 40,000 miles on it, these torque converter seals will have to be replaced. I don't know what it is. I've even seen them with 20,000-30,000 miles, and I'd think, oh, this torque converter seal will be good, and then I install it and then it leaks. So absolutely have to replace these every single time. Now, not a bad idea to go ahead and replace the CV axle seals while you're at it as well, but if you have to, at least you can get to those. If you were going to go ahead and replace those, make sure you for sure do the inside one there. It's more difficult to get to. Okay, first thing, I'm just going to go ahead and remove this so it's not getting in our way. And first thing up, we'll just go ahead and focus on our air box, getting it out of here. We've got a 10mm band right down there. We're going to go ahead and loosen that up for starters. Okay, we just got a 10mm, like I said, a little bit of an extension here. Okay, so that's loosened up enough. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get this clamp. Okay, the little clamp, not a good idea. This one, bigger one's on bottom, but I got to it and spun it around. Just take that loose, and then this will come out of here much easier, just like that. This hose here, very difficult to remove. Okay, so we got this 10mm down here we're going to take loose. Okay, before we start trying to take this out, we've got these plastic clips, a little Phillips head clips. Going to get them out so we can get this part of the air duct out of the way. Okay, so sometimes these will just spin and you'll have to actually lift up as you're turning it, depending on what condition this is in. So this in here is kind of wanting to spin, so I'm kind of turning it and lifting up. But you can pull them out of there if it doesn't want to turn properly. So we'll start lifting this up. You see how that just sets down there on that piece. Okay, we're just going to wiggle this part loose from the throttle body. Okay, we're going to go ahead and unclip this diagnostic connector. Just push that out of the way. You can see we've got a couple of clips. Okay, so we'll slide this way towards can see the clips that go into here. Okay, and you can note the 10 millimeter we need to get loose right here. Now I'd like to point out all of these bolts and clips. We are going to put them back where they go as we continue, so we're not forgetting where anything goes. So the plastic clips, the 10 millimeter bolts, all the bolts, we'll put them right back where they came from. There's that one. We'll put our little clips back over here. We've got a 12 millimeter bolt holding the clamp for the battery. Let's go ahead and get this while it's handy. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get the battery disconnected here. And instead of disturbing these, I'm just going to take this loose, this 12, and then these 10s here. Okay, so that one just clips on there, so there was no need to remove that. And we'll just place this back on here. Okay, this wire that's running here, we got a 10 millimeter here, and we got this clip, and it's always best if you can get to these, to get to them from the back side so you can squeeze it through without breaking it. Focus on the PCM, 10 millimeter nut, 10 millimeter. Okay, we're going to work on our PCM. Now I believe there's supposed to be a safety clip here. Well, these are both the same. This has to lift up like so. And I'm just going to pull it it may get stuck, so you want to not get too rough with it, and as you're just kind of work it back, maybe lift up on this if it's trying to get stuck, pick up on the body, and then it should pull straight up and off of here, just like so. So what we're going to want to do is immediately close that back. We're going to tape this. We're going to tape this off so we're not getting any trash or anything in there. Okay, so there we have that covered up. Now we'll get this side. So if it's not wanting to go, don't try to get too rough with it because you can break these. And the PCM should go right out of here. Okay, so we got our 12 millimeters. We need to get out of the battery tray here. Then you see the hidden one right back here that the PCM is covering up. Can't forget to put our little 10 millimeters back holding our PCM. And I don't think I mentioned it, this is has the 1.6 liter GDI engine. However, I think that the 2.0 transmissions use the same. And the last one. And put the clamp back so we're not losing it. And we'll put these 4 bolts back. Now here we've got this wire clipped here. You want to pay attention to where that goes. Some of you can get from the back side and get them up easily, and some, like here, you cannot. So you just have to kind of pry it up and hope that it doesn't break. Okay, you can see we kind of freed up this part. We've got one more clip down here on the transmission. And these you can kind of push with a screwdriver or something. There we have that. So we just pushed on those on each side. And then our fuse box here, just squeeze on these. And you can see these two 10 millimeters we need to get. Now it's obvious which way these go because you see the indentation here where this piece of this wire clamp goes. So you can mark them. It's not a bad idea to label and mark stuff. Okay, I did have that one connector push down on, and we can set this completely out of our way over here. We're going to get on our shifter cable here, and I'm going to just go ahead and get this, I believe it's a 13. Okay, actually this is a 12 millimeter as well. And we'll just push this through and just place this 12 millimeter nut right back on it. We're going to get this 12 millimeter ground, we're going to label it. Okay, and so like I said, anywhere you can put a bolt back, you'll want to do that. Any place that I just choose to leave the bolt out, I'll make sure that I label it. So I'm going to just mark that as ground. I'll leave the bolt on this. There we have that. Okay, now back on this shifter cable, you're just going to take a little screwdriver pick tool. You got these little clips on each side that you need to push in. You got to push it in firmly. You kind of need to push them in both at the same time while you're lifting up, but if you can't, oftentimes you can get one side started and then move on to the other side, but you do have to push it in pretty firmly because it's gripping this right here. Okay, so I've got it to move a little bit there. Okay. So there we have that. You can see those just kind of clip. Back here we got a 12 millimeter. It's just holding this wire harness. Okay, we're going to get on these wire connectors here. Push down firmly. Sometimes you have to push it actually towards, and if the clip still doesn't want to relent, we'll get a pick tool. Be mindful, these clips are old, brittle, very good possibility that you will break some of them, but the good news is that a lot of times the connectors really fit firmly, so you can still make do it, but you still want to be cautious. Okay, so I had to use the pick tool and it's still stuck. All this dirt, debris gets in here over time, and you can also use a little bit of WD-40, doesn't really hurt them. And obviously you want to be careful and not yank on your wires a lot there. So it is like to stick. So label everything, take pictures, and you'll be fine. Right now we're going to get on this connector here. Okay, now this one's just a simple lever type, but what we have to do is push right here on this lock, and then while we're pushing that, we'll lift up, and it should just lift. So be careful with your You know, work it back and forth if it's acting like it's stuck. Okay. See, this dirt and debris gets in here and makes these where they kind of stick. Okay, here we got our vent that's clipped, and then we got this wire here that's clipped. So when you get underneath, a lot of times you can even push with your finger on some of these, and some of them you can't. Let's see if we can't pry this up. Sometimes you just can't see what you're doing enough, but you see how it messes those up when you have to pry them out. And then we got this one down here for the vent. So there we have those loose. Okay, we're going to unclip this right here on the throttle housing, get some more slack. Okay, so it looks like we've done enough that we can do here to free everything up for now. We should be able to get to all of our bolts on our transmission, and we've got most everything freed up. Still got the tran cooler lines. We'll get to them. Okay, so the next thing we're going to get started on is getting the wheels chalked, and we're going to start taking these front wheels off, getting our CV axles and everything out, and drain some fluids, and just kind of proceed from there. Okay, so we got our rear wheel chalked here, and we'll be doing the same thing at this point on both sides. We're using a 21. Gonna break the lugs loose, both front wheels. You never want to take this out unless you can do it with a careful plastic trim tool, because you'll gouge it up. So you always want to kind of pop it out from the back side. Okay, so you see where we're lifting it from here on this part of the frame, subframe. Once we got it lifted, we'll go ahead and finish removing these. And we just got a jack stand placed under there for now. Okay, first thing we've got to take a center punch and pop this right here back out. Okay, because my end on this is a little bit too blunt, I've used it so much, I'm going to try to start out with a nail. I've got to get it enough where I can get underneath it. Okay, so that nail did the trick, and now we've got it up there enough we can do something. Okay, so we're using a 32 millimeter. If you don't have an impact, you could have somebody hold the brakes when you get a big long cheater pipe on here. So this is usually enough to break even the worst of them loose. Okay, so we got somebody holding the brake, and that was very easy to get loose. Now we can just spin this off the rest of the way by hand. Okay, so another problem you're going to have is these CV axles seizing in this hub here. So we're going to have to address that first. Now, I'm not getting any movement out of this. I'm going to slip this back on here. Then I'm going to take and just put this socket on here. It's going to connect with the shoulder. Okay, so far I'm not getting any movement. I'm looking for this thing to be moving any, and so far I'm not getting any movement at all. Okay, next thing up, I've got a heavier socket here, and you can see this thing's been hit a few times. It's 1.25 inches. And we're going to move on to my 8-pound sledge. Now I think we're getting a little bit of movement here now. Okay, you watch that gap there. I've just got my shot filled mallet. You should start seeing that close the gap. So let me get my big mallet. Okay, now you can see that moving right there. So we've got it freed up. So if you can get movement, you're home free. You can spray a little PB Blaster, whatever, WD-40. It's going to come out. We know it's going to come out of there now. I know you can't tell by looking at these rotors, but these are horrible. They're nice and smooth, but they've got a ton of chatter in them. So these things got hot. And I believe we're supposed to have some little screws, but those are missing. I mean, they're not 100% necessary. They just basically hold the rotor while you get your brakes on, but I believe it's supposed to have a couple in there. We're going to get to work on removing the brake caliper. Okay, you need a 12mm for this brake line. Okay, we're going to get on the bracket, the brake caliper. These are going to be very tight. Got an extended ratchet. I'll get that one loose. Go ahead and get on the lower. Brake pads themselves don't look horrible, but it was probably a little too late when they got replaced. Got overheated, something. Right, we're just going to get some wire through here and wire this thing up to the spring up there. Okay, we got that wired up nice and out of the way. Right, we'll go ahead and get our rotor off since we don't have the screws that go on there. And you can order a pack of those stainless steel screws, by the way. I'll leave a link. Okay, we're going to get on our ABS wire here now. We've got a 10mm. Okay, at this point I'm going to go ahead and disconnect our stabilizer link. This will all make sense eventually. We got a, let's see. Okay, so this is a 19mm. It's going to be pretty snug. Okay, we're moving on to the strut. Got a 17 to hold the bolt head, and we got a 19 over on this side. And you really need a breaker bar for this. Alright, so I got my breaker bar on here now. I can easily move this. Now I'm getting the lower one. Okay, you want to be cautious, don't hit your threads. But you got to get it moving. You can see that rust. And I'm sure it's a lot worse up north. Alright, so we're going to start dropping this down out while we're kind of supporting it a little bit. So we can see we got it pretty well loose. If it does try to stick up, I'll take my little punch and put in the end here the CV and just kind of tap it a little bit. Alright, so we're just going to kind of finish rocking it out of there. You can see how that WD-40 just kind of penetrates all the way through. That really helps out a lot. Okay, I'm just showing you the passenger side. We've just done the very same thing. We got the CV axle just sitting there. Okay, we got a drain pan under here. The next step, we're going to drain this transmission. Okay, pretty easy to locate. You got your plug that you would check your fluid, and you just come back here and you'll see this big 24 millimeter bolt right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this loose. This is a big plug. This stuff will pour out of here. And we'll get an idea about how much fluid that we at least need to get back in when we refill it too. This looks really dirty. The magnetic plug, this is pretty dirty. Just kind of rinsing that metal off. I mean, it's hard to say what went wrong. You know, a lot of times. So this car's got 140,000 miles. If you're not changing fluid, you know, being rough on it, on the transmission, a lot of different things, but at least for now, these transmissions are not very expensive. So now's the time to change one out for sure. Yeah, now if you don't engage this thing, you will not get all this fluid out. Every time you move it, you'll get fluid leaking out at different places, so be aware of that. Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and re-plug it. That's enough fluid to do what I need for now. Okay, so I got this poured up, this old fluid, and if you can see that, I got about 3.5 quarts out. I'm pretty sure that's low. I would expect to see about 4 quarts. A little bit low, it seems like. Now it could be that's where it's supposed to be. Not 100% sure. Don't see any leaks or anything, so I don't know where the fluid went, if it disappeared. Okay, next thing we're going to get on both sides before we get the CV axle is this plastic piece right here. So we got a 10mm and an extension. Okay, there's one. Okay, now we're down here on this other end. Okay, now we can take this down. Okay, I've got my 3-foot crowbar, and now we're going to work on getting this CV axle out. Okay, so we're just going to come in through here. It's quite simple once you get it in place. I'm going to get in behind it, and we're just going to catch it on whatever we can. Just kind of rock it a little bit. Okay, and you see we're just kind of catching it on part of that CV there. It doesn't have to hook really good, you know, we just have to catch it on enough to pop it out. And so now we got it loose. We can go ahead and pull it the rest of the way out by hand. Okay, so let's reach in here. And it's because we drained it, we won't have any fluid leaking out of there. So you can see that clip is what locks it in there. Okay, we're going to focus on the passenger side. It's much the same, except you have a longer CV axle that runs up in here to underneath the car. Now I usually just tackle this one the same way. You can see these ledges on the CV axle, and I just need to get pry bar, crowbar, hold this enough to pop that clip that's in there. Now sometimes these can be difficult, and I'll even have to come from the other side and hit it, just kind of like hammer my crowbar from the driver's side against this, depending on how difficult it wants to be. And sometimes I have to get this mount here out of the way to do that. Okay, all I'm doing is using the other end of the crowbar, the flat end, and we're going to try to rock this. See, prying really doesn't work. You need that kind of hammering, rocking action. That's what's going to pop that clip. I may have to get a different angle at it. I'm not getting anywhere yet. Okay, so basically, just right after I turned the camera off, I kept rocking it, hitting it right here, and it come loose. So now I've got it loose here. I'm just going to support it here. One hand, I'm kind of grabbing this outside, which you can't see. And we're going to try not to knock the camera over here. It's still hung a little bit. Alright, so I had to pop it out there a little more. This is, yeah, I have seen them worse than this before, so I can't say it's the worst. Alright, so there, you can see that end's got that same clip. Now I am going to take this plastic piece off right here, just like we did on that other side. I just didn't get it yet. Here's a comparison of these side by side. Just notice they have the same clip that holds them into the transmission there. Just one's a little bit longer. Okay, I wanted to show you what I've been working on because I've got to move my jack stands and stuff. You have these panels, and it's kind of like a weird fiberglass stuff. You don't want it on your arms. So you got these 14 millimeter plastic nuts, and then you just got these 10 millimeters that you got to take loose, and some of them will come off, some of them will stay on. All along this panel that goes underneath, and we've been taking all that off so we can actually see. I don't like to place jack stands where I don't know there's a brace, so I'm going to get a hold of this right here. So see, I've had to take this loose on both sides because I couldn't see what was under here, and I didn't want to push up on the floorboard. Don't really like using these unless I have to. So anyways, I didn't want to bore you with that, but took both of those off, both sides, and you can see where I'm getting ready to place my blocks, and I'm going to put a jack stand as well. And you can see where I've got the jack stands right now, but I have to move them back here before I can proceed on. Yeah, just to show you where I got these placed. These are just backups. Okay, so we're under the car here now. Since we got our blocks in place, we're going to start taking these 12 millimeters. If somebody knows what this is for, please comment. Now we can take that. Now we're going to get on this torsion mount. Here we got a 17 millimeter. And we're just going to start breaking this loose. Okay, with that bolt out, we got these 14 millimeters right here we need to get loose. So I wasn't about to get it with that little ratchet. You're going to need an extended handle. Okay, now we're going to get this one on the other side here. Okay, so there we got that mount out of the way. Okay, so we're back here at this flex pipe, and just wanted to show you, other than having the the bolts holding the subframe, we got this it's got this rubber hanger right here that we need to pop off. This hooks to the subframe, so we either need to pop it off here or we need to pop it off up here, whichever one's easier. I don't think it makes much difference. I'm going to attempt to push it off here. You're going to need some white lithium grease spray on here. You will never get these things off. Okay, so there we got it slipped off there using some white lithium grease and a flat screwdriver. You're able to kind of push it off of there, and you can also get a thin flat and get in behind this and kind of pry that open a little bit, and sometimes pop it off that way. I use a lot of this stuff right here. It works really good. Okay, now we're inside the vehicle. What we're going to have to do is pull this back here, and that's going to reveal this screw that we need to get at. Some trash in here. You can see that. That right there is what we got to get on. Okay, so we got a 12mm on that. Now before we take this up, we're going to put a mark. We got the steering wheel straight, and we're going to put a mark. If you get this thing back in here even a little spline off, your steering wheel won't be centered up anymore, and you'll have to take it back loose. So you want to mark it and avoid turning your steering wheel till you get this put back up. Alright, so we're just going to completely remove this bolt. Okay, so there's our bolt, our 12mm. Now we're going to go ahead and get us a paint mark on this and on that shaft there. Okay, you can see that white paint mark. I just kind of daubed it on there the best I could. Okay, now we just lift this up. Just kind of grab it, wiggle a little bit. Try to get it to come straight up. Okay, I was having trouble getting at it there where I was at, but you just basically got to wiggle this thing. But you can see it is completely loose at this point here. So we can just drop it down. Okay, we got the steering column loose. You see we've got a couple of jacks placed on each side so we can lower the subframe. We've got a mover's dolly there. Just going to set it down. We've got a 19mm extended handle ratchet, and we're just now getting ready to start taking the 4 bolts and nuts here from the subframe. Okay, and here's another view just to show you where we've got these placed. We're going to get started on the 19mm nut right here. Okay, so now we're back here at the back 19mm bolt. Go ahead and get on here. Okay, so now we'll just get our other two, the bolt and nut on the other side. The jacks are supporting the subframe. Okay, now we're just going to lower it a little bit on each side at a time. Okay, you can see it coming down. Now if you look in here, you can see how that's coming right out of that steering column nicely, and we shouldn't have anything else connected to anything, but we'll want to keep an eye on it. So now we've lowered it a little bit, we'll go over to the other side. And we're just going to do this back and forth, and then when we get it down on the mover's dolly, this is real easy. We'll just roll it out from under here, no problem. was wanting to kind of tilt this way, but it's not very heavy. I just kind of pushed it back, kind of centered up a little better. Okay, one thing you got to be mindful of is these dust shields here. When you're setting this down, you don't want to be bending that. You'll get it back together and have squealing and all sorts of noises. I may have to put another little block under here that's setting a little bit low. Okay, another 2x4 under there did the trick here. You can see how we got plenty of room now. We'll be able to drop this down, pull it back, drop it down. Okay, the next thing we're going to get started on is this brace right here. This is going to be in our way. We've got like a little shield there as well. But we're going to go ahead and get started on these. Okay, these are 14s. Okay, so next time we've got a 22 and we got a breaker bar we're going to get on this crank pulley here just to hold it. Okay, just going to squeeze. Okay, well it's stuck. Okay, you pretty much need both hands. You got to push while you're pulling. So there's that little dust shield. And you can see our first bolt right there. It's not exactly where I want it, so I need to rotate it a little bit. Go clockwise. Okay, so this is going to be a 17. Going to be pretty tight. You're going to have to hold the crank out here and support this while you're breaking this loose. Okay, and then once you get it loose, it will come out very easy. We can just reach in here with our fingers. There's that. So now we're going to rotate it around and just get the next one. Okay, so we're going to have 4 of these. Now if you're having trouble holding it, you can get your socket up here and it kind of will hit against the side here and prevent it from turning. The main thing is make sure that you got it on there straight and that you're not rounding your bolt off there. So if you have to prop it against that, or get something out here to hold your breaker bar. So this is the second one, and we're just gonna keep going here and get the other two. Okay, so we're taking out the last one. You notice this is not your typical flex plate. You got this, I guess what you'd call a thin flex plate, and the actual geared portion is for the starters made onto the torque converter. Okay, so we got those out. We're going to move on to the bolts on the transmission, and we're going to be numbering and labeling these, and we'll need to get the engine supported. Okay, so what I like to do, because sometimes you have different links, is I like to start numbering these somewhere. So we'll just kind of do this all the way around. And if you got a really dirty engine and stuff, you're going to need to clean it to get the marks to stay. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to number these and take some of these out down here on the bottom. And we got a 14 millimeter here. So I'm not going to take them all out. We're just going to take the ones down here on the bottom, and then we're going to get, the next step is getting this supported good. We're going to support it right under here, and we need these out of the way, so once we put the support, we don't have any difficulty getting to them. There's our first bolt. And like I said, some of these will be different links. This just cuts down on any mistakes and spending time trying to figure out what bolt went where. Okay, so we got these bottom 4 bolts out. We're going to go ahead and support this. Okay, I've just got a jack stand here, a block, and we're going to use that to support it. Okay, we got a bracket up here by the starter. We got a 10 millimeter right here that we need to get. Okay, we're on the other side here. We're going to take our 14, go ahead and get this first starter bolt here. Okay, so we jump back here to the back of the engine. We got a 14, this is the last one we got to get loose from down here. Okay, so we're back up top here. We've only got 4 bolts left in. I believe it's just 4. I could be wrong. But anyways, we've got either 3 or 4 here left. You can see and we're going to go ahead and we've got the jack stand under the engine. We're going to go ahead and get this mount loose. We got to go through the side here, this little dust shield pops from the outside. And we're going to go ahead and get this loose. I know that we've got our transcooler lines, but you don't want to take these hoses loose. You want to take them loose on the transmission. You got that big banjo bolt. That's where we're going to take it loose. As you can see, don't really have clearance. So we're going to drop it down. We got slack. Once we drop it down, we'll take them loose. No problem. And just to be cautious, I got some blocks here just for backup. Okay, another thing I'm doing before I take this loose is I'm breaking these 3 bolts loose. You know, one above the starter, one right there. Using a swivel, some various extensions. These are very, very tight up here. They're way tighter than the ones on the bottom. Okay, we're getting ready to pop this little access cap off. This fender well, got to push in on these tabs. Okay, for these 14s you really need an impact. There is one more step I need to take before taking these loose. Okay, so we just place the jack here for support. So if we don't have the jack supporting it, this will, as the transmission drops, the bolts are going to go in an angle, and it's going to make it difficult for me to remove these. See, very long bolt. Right, so I'm just going to start lowering this down onto my jack stand and my blocks here. Okay, now we got the engine and the transmission supported on the blocks. Okay, another thing we're going to do is take this mount out because it's not going to allow me room. I need to slide the transmission over, so we're just going to take this out of the way. Got a 14 millimeter. There's one more on the bottom here. I'm using my slim ratchet. I'll probably switch over to a ratchet wrench in just a second. Okay, so right now I'm taking a chain. This is about, when I've got it doubled up, it's like 19 inches or so. We're going to just loop it in an easy spot, or get a bolt in an easy spot, which would be this bracket right here. Try to get a washer on the other side of it. Okay, so pretty easy. And then on this end, we've just got it looped and centered up. Okay, so next thing we're going to get our lift over here. I know this is not probably going to be centered very well, but it'll be fine. Okay, we got our lift set up. And we've just got a little bit of tension on it here. Getting ready to take those 3 bolts. So the engine supported. We've got the transmission supported. And I made sure I got enough chain going from here to here so we can have enough room to drop this down. Got ourselves another mover's dolly. You can see we don't have very far to go. Okay, so I'm ready to get in here and get these last 3 bolts. This is the one in the back here. Got our final 2 here. And usually this transmission will stick on those alignment pegs. Okay, so got one more. Okay, now I can actually see the transmission separate, and that's a good sign because it means that it's not hanging up on that center nub on the torque converter. That's always something that happens, and then it'll mess around and the torque converter will pull out and make a nice mess. Okay, if you can see that gap as I'm taking this last one loose, it's opening up the gap between the engine and the transmission. So there's no issues with the alignment pegs or the torque converter itself sticking. That's good. That's the last one. Okay, and with it loose like this, usually all we have to do is wiggle it back a little bit. You can see it's already dropped loose here. Okay, so we got it loose here. We're going to lower it down a little bit so we can get these transmission cooler lines loose. Okay, so let's carefully start lowering it down here. Okay, so we're going to take a 22 millimeter and start cracking these loose here. And there'll be a little bit of drippage. I'm going to wrap them with a paper towel and stick them in a plastic bag. I got a drain pan underneath at the ready. I don't know how much is going to pour out of here initially. Okay, so get your 2 little copper washers that sandwich that line. Don't lose those. Okay, I think I lost. Okay, I left off the bracket bolt there. I got to get that loose. I just knew I was forgetting something. Surprisingly, not much came out of those lines. So I'm just going to wrap them up and stick them in this plastic bag. Okay, so just finished setting it on down here. Okay, I've just went ahead and moved the lift out of the way and got the chain loose, and we're just getting ready to try to pull it out through here. I think I can work it around this to where I shouldn't need to lift it any. Okay, we're getting it through there. The only obstacle is that little plastic fender piece over here. Probably should have just took that out of the way, but I was able to get it past there. Alright, one of the things we need to do is transfer this part of the mount over this 17 millimeter. We're just going to take this. Alright, we'll just get this on the other one. Right, we're going to get some medium Loctite going back on here. Right, we're going to go ahead and torque these to 40 foot-pounds. Okay, now we got this little portion that our shifter goes. This is got the two 12 millimeters and transferring this over. It has like a little rubber type spacer for the washers, I guess you could say. Wouldn't torque these a whole lot. I wouldn't go more than probably about 10 foot. I mean, they're meant to be somewhat flexible, I guess, with the rubber bushing there. See how that has some flex to it. You know, maybe about 10-15 pounds, probably good for those. Okay, and then right here I've got to transfer this ground wire. This goes right here. It's got this little nook that catches. Again, you know, I wouldn't go more than probably about 15 foot-pounds on it. It's not a lot. Okay, so basically just transferring everything over that we can just see obvious. And there's a little like wire clip brace right here that we also transferred over. Okay, now we took the torque converter out. Now, if you hadn't removed one, all you do is pull it straight. Just pull it straight off. And if it binds, you just wiggle it just a little bit, but it should just pull right straight out. Now, what we're going to do is go in here and take this seal out. You really need some kind of a tool like this. There we go. There's the old one. Now I would have liked to have got a national seal. I hope that this one is going, I'm already seeing a problem with it, that it's a little bit thicker, so we might have an issue here. Well, I'm going to go ahead and go with it and see if it's going to give me any issue here. I've kind of just got it started, and I'm going to have to tap it the rest of the way in with a, I'm going to get a block here, wooden block. Alright, I just got a block here. I'm going to tap on these edges. The diameter and everything feels good. I'm not sure about this thickness, how it's going to work. Okay, I think that's bottomed out. Okay, so we're going to need to get some clean fluid. It did go down close to being flush, but not as far as the other one, but I think it's going to work. Okay, we're getting ready to set this back on here. Let's say get clean fluid around that seal and then around the outer part of this torque converter. So we're just going to start spinning it until we get it to go. So we're going to have to spin and push on this until we can get it to seat back in there. Okay, and just by comparing it to the other one, you know, when we get it down there far enough, we should have about a little over half of an inch between here and the edge here, so we know we got it in there good. Okay, another thing that I take the time to do is take a flat file, run it along all around this surface to make sure there's no burrs or anything. Another thing I did, put some white lithium grease here and here. Want to put some around this. You absolutely want to check any threads. So we got a thread here, thread here, here, here. Make sure those threads are good. Absolutely make sure these bolts, your torque converter bolts, will go in and there's no issues. Easy to fix this while it's out here. Very difficult if you get this installed. Okay, we've got everything prepped and ready to go back under the car here. This is my bad movers dolly. It's got some bent wheels on it. Kind of overloaded at a time or two. As you can see, it will fit in there. Now we got the old lines there, just kept them there. They are loose. When I start getting into place, we'll go ahead and remove them and slap the transcooler lines back on. Okay, I did hook my chain up a little bit differently. I don't know how this is going to work, but I kind of like hooked it through back there and here. So you're just using a big washer, and I'm hoping I can get a little bit more stability with this, but either way, we're going to try it out. Okay, we got the lift back over here, and we're just going to go ahead and start lifting it and see how this is going to work. Okay, and judging by the looks of this so far, it's actually raising it pretty level, and that was a lot better than I expected. Okay, we're just going to slowly come up with it until we can get to where we can get these transcooler lines on here. So I already had these loose, so they're just barely tight. Okay, there we got that old one off. This thing has plenty of slack. Okay, so we got the little copper washer, and then the little copper washer goes on to this side. And we got to do that with both of them. Okay, so I underestimated the difficulty of getting that bolt started. It does have to be perfectly into alignment or it will not start. But you definitely want to thread it by hand because you sure don't want to mess these threads up. But at least I have the luxury of wiggling these lines at this point, and also I have the luxury of wiggling the transmission around in order to get the bolt to thread down good. So I'm just kind of threading it all the way down as far as I can by hand before I put the ratchet back on there. And then I need to get up there and make sure I can get my little 10mm in before I tighten these down. Okay, I'm working that 10mm in up here. It's going in nicely. With those in place, it's going in no problem. Just going to leave it kind of loose for a second. And we're going to go ahead and finish snugging these up. I'm not going to worry about torquing these. I'm just going to snug them down good and tight. Don't want to over tighten though. Okay, with those lines on, we're going to go ahead and carefully lift this up. Now, I know it's not going to be perfect. A lot of times, you know, you get this close, you can get a bolt started and then kind of get another bolt started and kind of lift it up and rotate it. I'm definitely a little bit off here, so I'm just gonna have to adjust it, make sure we're not hitting. This actually came out pretty easy. It's going back in pretty easy too. Now this end I've got a little bit high over here, so I'm going to have to try to figure this out. Okay, I really don't have this level enough here. I wish I'd kind of just gotten back in the same spot I was at. I could have done better. But I don't want to lower it back down, so I'm going to use a jack under here to push this side up. Otherwise I'd have to take it back down and redo it. Okay, well, what I realized was that I shouldn't have hooked it up this way. I should have just went back the same way that I came out. And what I was trying to get it level succeeded in making a big mess because the back shouldn't even be lifted up. Right now I'm trying to get one bolt back there barely started, and then I'm having to manhandle and lift this because I can't even get my jack in here. You see how far I got to go to get up to that number 7. So that's what I'm doing because, and I should know better than this by now, but make sure that you get this thing where it's set and level like it goes in here. Okay, so there we go. You can see in there, I lifted it up, had to lift it up by hand. That side over there was, you know, kind of loose, just started basically. Lifted up by hand. So I'm going to try to go ahead and get some Loctite on these and get the rest of these started here before it gets dark. And we'll see about hopefully getting this mount back on here. Okay, like I said, we got that bolt that I labeled 7, and then the one over here in the back, and that's enough to hold this. We're going to go ahead and get this lift out of the way. It's just right in the way, and work on getting some of these other transmission bolts in. I'm going to be using medium Loctite on these, and just to show you the ones that matter, is that one. See, these two over here are your starter bolts. The ones that really matter is that one, that over there. That's only two up top, actually going into the engine. And we're going to go down underneath and get these other ones. Okay, so we've got all of these labeled. I would say that you want to go ahead and check your crank. Make sure that you can turn that over. If you can't, then you didn't get your torque converter seated, but if you measured it like I did, then you know you don't have anything to worry about there. Okay, I'm just going to get this lower starter bolt going here, just kind of holding it in place. Okay, so we're going to get this top bolt here for the starter. I left that other one a little bit loose in case I had trouble lining this up. Right, and there's that one. Okay, so we're just getting these back ones, and you can see why it's a good idea to label. Even these, there's like small differences in the bolts. So they look similar. So that's why I just mark all of them. So these are very easy to get to, except for the very top two up there where I had to use the swivel. These are all easy to get to. We're going to go through, we're going to torque these now to 35 foot-pounds, and I'm probably just going to call it a night as it's just getting too dark here. So I'm going to just go through and torque these. We'll call it a night. Okay, we got our torque wrench back here with a swivel. We're going to get these top ones. So these are the more difficult, but you are able to get to them. Well, we're torquing this other one up here on the top with a swivel. 35 foot-pounds on all these. Okay, now I'm on this upper starter bolt. Alright, so you get the idea here. We're going to get on some of these lower ones. Got our lower starter bolt. Alright, so all those are torqued, so that's a wrap for the night. Okay, we got our jack positioned under the transmission here. We're getting ready to get this transmission mount. And you know, we're a little bit off, we're too far to the back, and we're going to also have to lift it up some. So I'm just using the jack here. You notice it's kind of just moving it more into position as I'm lifting it up. It's very easy to move this. Okay, so we're going to try to work this mount. And I'm a little bit high. Getting the one on the bottom here. So it's best to leave it down a little bit until you get this one in. Start torquing these to 40 foot-pounds. And the one on the bottom, will just snug that one up. Okay, now we're getting ready to get these bolts coming through here. We're going to make sure that we've got it lifted where it needs to be here. Okay, we got our long bolts, a little bit of medium Loctite there. We'll see how this is going to. Looks like I might be a little bit low. You'll notice the end on this is where it will go in there and actually get it started for you before you get the threads going. Okay, so we got it closed. We're going to go ahead and start just running it down here. It's really easy once you get it lined up, because that beveled end will help get it started for you. Just give it a little push. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and torque these to 40 foot-pounds as well. Then we'll go ahead and remove our jack. Now make sure your jack stand or whatever you're supporting the engine is down as well. Okay, next thing up, we're going to get our torque converter bolts back in. We've got our 22 millimeter on the crank here to hold it, and got us a 17 millimeter. Okay, and when you come under here, you'll have to turn this crank a little bit. You know, this won't be lined up where you need it. So you'll need to move it. You may need to move the torque converter itself if need be. This part should still be in the same place you left it, but the torque converter, you have to kind of orient that where you need it, and you can move it with your finger. So we've got our medium Loctite here. Yeah, more than likely your torque converter will be seated back a little farther than it needs to be, but this will pull it up. Let me just take it, snug this first one up a little bit. We're not going to get it tight. I'm just going to kind of run it down snug and then back it off. Okay, so I've got it snugged down. I'm just going to back it off just a little, just where it's not tight. And then we're going to rotate it on around. Just a second. And we'll get some Loctite, do the same thing here. Okay, and this is our third one. Okay, this is our fourth bolt and final, and you notice how they got a nice mark on there for us. So we're going to start here torquing and work our way around. Okay, so I'm going to torque these to 35 foot-pounds. I think they called for 28, 32. Always go 35 on these. And what I'm doing is kind of setting the socket against this edge so I actually don't have to hold it here. Okay, so there's the first one. We've got a mark. So we're just going to continue to work our way around here. So this is just keeping me from having to hold the crank there, which I could do that too. Want to hold it on there nice and firm. Okay, there's the second one. We'll just get the other two. Okay, so we're right back at the start where we got the mark there. And if you want to, you can go back and double check them. Okay, now we're going to put this brace back here. And I wanted to point out on these CV axle seals where I'm here at it, you see how it's got like a rubber seal in there? Now I put some of my silicone paste on there, but you could use clean transmission fluid or whatever. But it's going to be like that on both sides. But I wanted to make sure that when it slides in there that it's going in with a little bit of transmission fluid or a little bit of that dielectric grease. And of course you want to have all of these loose until you get them all into place and lined up. I'm going to go 35 on these as well. Now while I was here at this, I put a little of that white lithium grease on this, because when we get the subframe, we're going to want some grease on that to get the slide back on that rubber hanger. Okay, we just wheeled this back under here just like when we were taking it out, and you see we got the jacks back on both sides just to lift it. And you know, once we get it up here, we can get one of the nuts or the bolt on one side to hold it. It's pretty easy. Okay, so you got to make sure you keep stuff like this out of the way. And we've got our 19mm nut, and we got our 19mm bolt. So we're going to start lifting it here. And you know, of course, the more you can get it centered, the better. You have to slide it around on here. Now the biggest thing is we're going to have to watch the part going to the steering column and then get these onto here. Okay, so the jack somewhere up here in the front seems to work really well. Just going to go from side to side. I'm going to go inside and take a look at this steering column. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that this was going into place nicely. As you can see the mark. And we don't have it up all the way, but the mark is lining up. The steering wheel did not get moved, so everything's in place. Let's go ahead and lift this up a little bit more. It's really pretty easy getting this on here, because you got the studs, these large studs coming out here, so it makes lining it up very easy. So we're just going to get these on here, and you can come through down here with an extension, and it could make it easier for you. So we're just going to start snugging this up here. And we'll do this on both sides, and then we can move our jacks out of the way. Okay, with the 19mm nut holding it, we can easily get this in place here. You may have to push up on the back to get it to line up. We'll just do the same thing on the other side there. Okay, I've got my torque wrench. We're going to go 110 foot-pounds. Okay, we're going to go 110 on the studded one now. And we'll just do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to try to get this exhaust hanger back on here. This is always fun. Alright, getting ready to get the 12mm in here. And we're going to be using the red Loctite. And you see the mark. Looks good. said if you get it off and your steering wheel's out of alignment, you'll have to pop it back up and redo it. Right, so I'm going to get my wrench over here. Okay, and it should just go into place. I don't really know the torque on this, but you know, get it tight. You know, I'd probably say at least 30 to 35 foot-pounds. Okay, I'm just going 35 on this. Okay, getting ready to get the driver's side CV axle. Put a little grease on that clip and make sure this is clean. Said either some dielectric grease or something, or clean transmission fluid on the end of that as well. Don't want anything tearing any seals. All right, so we're going to kind of use the CV itself. Okay, and that's in there. And you can tell when it bottoms out, it's not going to go any farther. Okay, we're going to start feeding the passenger side CV back in here. And then we'll climb underneath. Okay, so we're just going to support this with both hands. I'm going to use that same hammering action using the CV itself. And this one's a little bit longer, so it's not quite as easy. But we have to get it all the way down. Alright, looks like we've got it bottomed out. I'll show you what this looks like. Like I said, you'll know it when it's bottomed out. It's not going to move. Okay, while we're under here, we're going to get this mount back in place. Should look something like that. And you'll notice, let me show you something. You notice the way this mount is right here. So this has to slide kind of into that from the bottom. Like if you try to push it from the front of the back, it's not going to go. So it has to like slide up. Okay, so we'll just feed this up here. Push the engine some. That'll get that in place. We'll take our 14, start snugging these up. All right, I'm going to go 45 on the 17 millimeter. We're going to go 35 on these 14s. Okay, we're getting ready to put this knuckle back together. Just wanted to show you we went ahead and greased the splines on here. You just want to make sure that's greased so it's not sticking in there. We greased up the front of the face of this a little bit, just wiped off the excess. And let's see, we're going to go ahead and just pop the CV in here first. It's going to be the same on the other side from this point, so I'm not going to bother showing that side. So I really like to grease things up. I like when things come apart like they're supposed to. And now we're pushing it up into the knuckle. We'll need to lift that some. These are self-locking. Holding this with a 17. Okay, once it's snug, usually you don't have to hold the other side, but we'll see. We're going to go 108. Alright, we're going to take our 10mm and snug this up now. Got our 32. This will get torqued to 185 once we get the tire on, or you could have somebody hold the brakes and torque it, because we need to also punch this back in to lock it. I was just lining up these holes here for these little screws, but I don't have them, so it doesn't matter. And the screws really don't matter. You can take a lug nut and do this right here, and that'll hold that straight. Okay, if you didn't move the piston, you should be able to slip this back on. And we got our medium Loctite for our caliper to knuckle bolts. Tightening the 17mm down. Okay, we're going to torque this 65 foot-pounds. Get this brake line. And we got our 12mm. Okay, the best way to do this is get somebody to push the brake and get this to 185 foot-pounds. And once we have that torqued, we're going to take our punch and we're going to hit this right back here and knock that back in, that groove. Okay, let's go ahead and get our stabilizer link back over here. You may have to push this down if it doesn't line up. Our 19mm nut. I'm going to torque this to 45. Okay, we're ready to get the wheel back on. I'm not worried about those plastic pieces either underneath or on the side. I can get those later. I want to make sure I don't have any leaks or if I need to get to anything. We've got our 21. And we'll torque it once we get the vehicle lowered and everything later. The sun is getting over here quick, creating lots of glare. Okay, I took that out because I didn't want it getting damaged. I'm going to place this shifter back down in here. And that's just going to lock under those tabs that I showed you. You cannot pull that off of there. Notice the square part that keeps it from turning. Just going to snug that down. 12mm. Okay, we've got this wire bracket. Another 12mm. Okay, I'll start reclipping some of these. And I like to take this dielectric grease because a lot of these plugs get dirty and they don't want to come loose. We'll put a little bit in the hinges on this other one. Alright, so let's get this one back down. We've got that one locked. Okay, I'm getting this other wire clipped. This is going to clip back here. Okay, then we got our wires going back to the fuse box here. And we'll just snug these down. They're 10mm. Get this connector. Okay, I want to switch gears a minute. I want to get this filled before I get any more stuff in the way. But what I hadn't done is drained the bottom down there to make sure there's no excess old fluid in there. So we're going to do that first. Okay, so this is what we're going to be going with. And I did drain another half of a quart out of there, believe it or not. But we're going to go ahead and start putting this in before we get any more stuff in the way. This is 4 quarts. So we're going to put all this, and I've got another partial, one of these. So we'll just fill it as needed. But I'm going to start off with 4 quarts. If we get too much, then so be it. Okay, I've just got a 3/8 extension. We're going to get the top of this vent cap loose here. There's that. And you have to fill this slowly. It will overflow. Alright, so I'm just going to slowly get this entire jug in here. See, I got to go real slow. It's already overflowing and bubbling there. Okay, we got that jug in there. We'll go ahead and put this back on. Now, if I have to add any more, I'm going to go through the actual overflow point. So I'm just going to snug this back down. Okay, I was just getting ready to place this ground. Goes right here. That little part of the clamp has a little place that goes into the hole. This is a 12 millimeter as well. Okay, I'm just getting ready to set this battery tray. Start getting our 12 millimeters in. This 10 millimeter back here. We'll snap that wire in over here. See, we reclipped it there and got that tightened down. We're gonna get our TCM or PCM set back in place here. Here's 10 millimeter. Got the 10 millimeter nut. And we got one more 10 millimeter bolt. We'll just secure those. Okay, so we make sure the levers are up. Get them on there straight. I'm just going to go ahead and set the battery in. Go get this 12 millimeter clamp. All I do is just reattach my wire. This nut here, it's 10 millimeter. Same thing on the other side. Actually, we'll just hold off a minute before connecting that. We're going to get this piece of duct back down in here. Flip it around. It's going to snap right in there. Okay, sometimes these little clamps don't want to cooperate. Alright, so there we have that. Okay, we're going to get this lower part of the air box. It's got to slip onto that duct over there. I think I should have waited on that other piece there. Okay, now we got one of these that goes here. You got the one back here, you really need a magnet to get down in there. We'll get an extension and snug that up. Okay, now we're going to slip this duct back in here and get the top part of our lid on. Go ahead and clip this. Got my 10mm extension. We're going to go ahead and snug this duct up here. Okay, we're going to get this back in place. Go ahead and set our engine cover. Okay, there's a couple things underneath I know I missed. This little wire connector right here. It has a little bracket I took loose. And the reason is that anytime you don't take something like this loose, you wind up breaking it. So it's better to take it loose. It's got a little 10mm. I think we're getting real close here. Okay, next up is this piece. Who knows what this is for? It's got 4 12mm bolts. Don't over tighten them, that plastic will break. Alright, so we'll snug these up here. And we're all about finished up. Now, I did change oil when I had all this apart. Okay, so we got those all tightened down. Okay, now those little fiberglass panels, whatever, I took off on both sides back there. Again, not putting those on at this moment. You know, until I get everything that's done, I'm not going to be working on it anymore. I'm going to leave those off because I can see where the frame is. Okay, now we can finally go ahead and get our negative connected here. Dig it out over here. Get that snugged up. I believe that's a 12. 12 it is. Okay, so now I'm gonna leave it on the blocks and stuff for now. I want to go ahead and crank it up and get the transmission fluid circulating, check for leaks, engage it, drive, reverse, make sure that it is doing what it's supposed to do here before we do anything else. Okay, I've got it cranked up and running here. We're going to go under and check for leaks. Okay, this here is from the overflowing. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and engage it and see what it's going to do. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put it in gear now. Okay, push the brake. Okay, we'll go ahead and put it in drive. Okay, so it appears to be operating. So far, so good. No leaks coming from the CV axles or anywhere else. So I think we're going to go ahead and get the vehicle lowered off of the blocks and our jack stands over here, and then we'll go ahead and torque our lugs and see about taking it down the road. Okay, so I'm just getting ready to torque the front lug nuts. We're going to go 90 foot-pounds, and we're going to take it for a test drive. Now, I'm going to be careful I just want to get it up to temperature, but I don't know how much fluid, how much more transmission fluid I need in here. So we're just going to drive it around, get it warmed up, not really be getting on it, and then bring it back. We're going to have to check it, and for that we're going to have to get it up on some ramps and then level out the back end to be able to do that. Right, so we're going to go 90 foot-pounds, 21. Okay, I just drove it down the road just a little bit, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to need more fluid in here because they drain a lot out of these. It's not like just changing the fluid. When they ship these, they take almost all that fluid out. So you really need 4 ramps. That way you can just drive up on it, get your rig level. Okay, so we got us a pan down here. We're going to go ahead and take this cap. You just turn it a little bit. Okay, so this turns out a little bit, and what we're looking for is fluid trickling out, and we're not seeing anything, so we need to pump some more fluid in here. Now, I've got it running, got to have it running, and up to temperature. I'm betting I'm going to need more of this. I only got a little over a quart left in this jug. Thought I had more than that. I believe I got this at Harbor Freight, and see how long it is. It ain't going to fit this lid, but that don't matter. We just need it to get down in there. You just want to be careful and don't be knocking it over. Okay, so we got our drip pan down here. We got our transmission fluid ready to go. Alright, so that will just go right in there, and we'll just pump it in there, but you want to keep a hand on it because it will fly back out and make a mess, I know. Okay, so we're just gonna start getting fluid in here until it starts trickling out. But I don't really know how much it's gonna take, but I'm probably gonna be getting another jug. I mean, that's pretty empty. So it could be quite a bit. I'm going to find out. So I know I got 4 quarts. This would make 5.5. Okay, this in here is about empty. You see that we're just pumping air now. And it's still not full yet. Okay, I got another jug here. We got a good steady drip coming out of here now, so we got it topped off. I'm gonna get this plug back on here. You can just twist that with your fingers. It's not really that difficult. Okay, so all together I got 6 quarts in this thing. And I'll probably even check it again. I'll drive it and I'll check it again to make sure, but I'm pretty confident it's got enough in it now. Okay, so here we are driving this down the road, and it's definitely got a lot better pickup, taken off. I mean, I know it's a 4-cylinder, but the transmission was just not doing its job before. You could tell that it was slipping, and been doing that for a little bit. I knew I was going to have to replace it, but then it went to bucking and everything got way worse. But it's definitely shifting through the gears really nice. You can tell it's shifting gears and going through the gears. And you know, there may be some kind of a relearn that the PCM has to go through with the shift solenoids and stuff, so it may, you know, it's probably going to learn your driving patterns anyway, but so you may have to drive it a little bit. But I can, you know, it was shifting a little bit too firm at first, but you can tell when something's shifting good, but yet it's just a little bit off. And that's what it felt like, but it was shifting good and strong. And I'll probably take it back and top off the transmission fluid, just check it out and make sure that we're not going to need to add any. Like I said, I'm going to just drive this around for a bit and get this fluid circulated really good, and then I'll take it back and I'll check it again just to make sure, absolutely sure, that I've got all the fluid that I need in here. So that's all I'm going to do, and looks like this is going to be a success. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video. Check that fluid again, and it was trickling out really good. Got plenty of fluid in it, and it's shifting really good, really nice. So that's going to do it, and thank you for watching.